Good afternoon. Shiv Refuah Shleim Yehuda Chaim Ben Esasara, Refuah Shleima, and Leila Nishmas Fida Ben Chaim Pesach, Yitzchak Ben Sarah, Devorah Bas Yitzchak, Avram Ben Mordechai David, Reuven Ben Shmuel, Chana Golda Bas Yisrael, Yeshua Ben Shmuel, Mordechai Netzach Ben Rivka, Rochel Bas Yosef, Eliezer Ben Yaakov, Chaim Ben Gedalia, Zalman Lei Ben Moshe, Chaim Elio Ben Yosef Moshe, Amichai Ben Yaakov, Gedalia Ben Tzvi Reuven, William and Helen, and Rochel Bas Yosef, David Ben Abraham, Leila Nishmatam. This week's Haftorah is from the book of Yirmiyahu. Normally we read the Haftorah that has a theme of the Parsha, but from now on until Rosh Hashanah, the theme will not be the Parsha, it'll be the first 3 weeks of the Haftorah that we're going to read now until Tisha B'Av is the first 3 Haftorahs of tragedy, followed by 7 Haftorahs of what? Of comfort. So this is the first of the 3 Haftorahs of tragedy of the Churban leading up to what? Tisha B'Av. But we'll see that even in the Haftorah of tragedy, it's what? It ends on a very high note. And we'll see what it means for us today. Jeremiah 1, Yirmiyahu, and he lived in the city of Anatot. Why should that matter where he lived? It's very dear to me, Rabbi, because Anatot is next to Pisgat Zev. So he was my neighbor. Jeremiah was the prophet. He was my neighbor, Yirmiyahu, and the town next to Pisgat Zev is still called Anatot. Unfortunately, it's now inhabited by our peace partners. But that's the town where Yirmiyahu comes from, next to Pisgat Zev, and the name is still called that. And so he didn't want the job. None of the Nevi'im wanted the job. That's exactly why God chose them, right? Because they felt that they're what? Unworthy and humble, and that's exactly why God went after them. So God tells him, I'm sending you, Yirmiyahu 1, lintosh for lintots, lahavit laharos, to speak about destruction, tearing down, to smash and demolish. Speaking about the Churban. But the next word is livnot v'lintoa. The purpose of the Churban, the purpose of destruction, and the purpose of the demolition of the city and the temple is livnot, to rebuild better. And we see this in Brooklyn, where I made Aliyah from Flatbush. Rich people buy beautiful, gigantic homes. There's nothing wrong with them. And what do? They tear them down and they demolish them in order to what, Laurent? To rebuild better. So this is what God is saying. It looks like I'm destroying the Beis HaMikdash. But stay tuned. The best is yet to come. You don't believe me? Avi, go to Flatbush in Borough Park. Huge homes they buy. Nothing wrong. They demolish it, tear it down. Why did he do that, Avi? To build something bigger and better. Well, God beat them to it. So he tells Jeremiah in the prophecy of, if you're a little warm, you can tell her to put on the air conditioner. You mind telling the lady? To put on the air conditioner? Thank you. The purpose of the Churban that looks so tragic is in order to rebuild something better. So despite our sins, Hashem is demonstrating tough love. So it's a prophecy of Churban and destruction, but the key note is livnot b'lintoa, to rebuild better. And the prophecy ends on such a high note. After God gives a catalog of all of our sins and rebellion, he says, Zacharti lo chesed norayich. I remember the love of your youth, ahavas kilasoyech, when you were my young Kala. Lech techachva b'midbar. You follow me in the desert. You are my young bride, God says. And when I took you out of Egypt, you didn't say, where are you taking me? In the Midbar Sinai? There isn't even one 7-Eleven there. Right, Yosef? Not even one 7-Eleven, no Motel 6. Where are you taking me? But we said no. We said, sweetheart, we'll follow you anywhere. So God says, Zacharti lo chesed norayich. In the prophecy of doom and destruction, God says, I can't stop loving you. I remember when you were my young Kala. You hear what God is saying? that we did a chesed. How could I do a chesed for God? But that's what he says in the end of Jeremiah 1. He says, Zacharti la chesed norayich. You Yidden did a chesed for me when you were my young kala. And you didn't say, where are you taking me? In the middle of nowhere? We didn't say that. God says, I did a loving kindness for the big boss. Little old me, Laurent. Can you imagine that? But that's what God says in Jeremiah. When you were my young kala. Now, my Rebbe Rapam Zatzal said that some Talmidim would approach him, and they were poor yeshiva boys, and they had to count every penny when they got married. And they said, is it important to get a wedding album? It's so expensive. I remember I paid $500 from it. Is it kedai? Every dollar is, yeshiva boys don't have much money. He said, get a wedding album. Even borrow. Why, Laurent? The boss. Hashem has a wedding album. In this week's Haftorah, after all the fights and all the struggles, God said, we betrayed him with this sin and that sin, and God takes out the wedding album. I remember you were my young kala. Let's get lovey-dovey again. So Rapam Zatzal would say, Yidisara, every couple fights. It's only natural. Remember the book, Men Are From Venus and Mars? It's natural to fight. But when you have a fight, my Rebbe said, take out the wedding album. Remember how lovey-dovey we were? Who set the example? Krish Baruch Hu. Right? We betrayed him and all the sins, and Hashem takes out his wedding album. He says, you did such chesed for me when you were my young kala. I'll never forget that. My endless love. They got everything from us. Yosef, my endless love.
Rabbi,
yes.
Was this the expulsion of Gush Katif?
Beautiful. Yeah. This Haftorah, or Nechama, she scares me. She's a great memory. In 2005, guess which Haftorah we read? Yes. I'll give you one guess, Dr. Abramson. This one, when they were demolishing the homes in Gush Katif, Jeremiah said, don't be nervous. Jeremiah, my neighbor from Atot from 2,700 years ago, I'm tearing down, I'm demolishing and destroying, Livnot Valentoa will be built much better. And this Haftorah, Dr. Hackett, Kawinky Dinky, we read that week. I remember 2005. Thank you for reminding me. Kawinky Dinky? I don't know Kawinky Dinkies.
We're also going to remove them.
Right? So the destruction and demolishment, Yirmiyahu says, it's all part of the plan. You've been to Borough Park, Yosef. They buy beautiful mansions. Nothing wrong with that. They demolish it. They make a churban to build even bigger and better. So Jeremiah said, this is the idea. Incredible. The Parshat, Parshas Pinchas, again, the Haftorah and the current events in what? In the Parshat also. The Torah gives us the name of the Midianite princess that Pinchas made a shiksabab. Her name was Cosby Bas Tzur, not Bill Cosby. Cosby Bas Tzur. So Rashi wonders, Yosef, the Torah is GPS, God's personal system. I need to know what was the name of the Midianite princess that seduced the chief of what? Of Shevet Shimon. Who cares what her name is? Torah is GPS, God's personal system. So Rashi says something incredible, current events. Look how much the Midianites hated us. Normally a parent would sacrifice his life to save his child or the honor of his child. Here, the king of Midian and the king of Moab turned their own daughters into harlots to ruin Israel. Look how much they hate us, says Rashi. The kings of Midian and Moab and all the princes sent their daughters to make themselves harlots, if that's what it takes to what? To destroy Israel. Look how much they hate us. Yosef, current events. Now, about 2 weeks ago, this Israeli police lady was murdered in Mashah Shechem. and the terrorist was shot, killed. You know what the mother said of the terrorist? Halavai, all of her children should die if that's what it takes to kill Yidden. 2 weeks ago. She's quoting Rashi without knowing it. A person normally loves his children more than his own self. Here they sent their own daughters to ruin themselves, knowing the daughters are going to get killed. But if that's what it takes to kill a Jew, it's worth it. In other words, they hate us, Avi, more than they love their own children. That's our peace partners.
And that's what goes in my
Right? That's our peace partners. So Rashi, from writing from the year 1040, Yehuda, is writing what? Current events. So their hate for us is more than the love for their own children. That's who you, so Rashi says, who you're dealing with. It's not ancient history, Sarah. We have to know who we're making concessions to. Otherwise, who cares the name was Cosby? Who cares, right? But you have to know the daughter of the king of Midian and the daughters of the king of Moab sent their own daughters to destroy themselves. That's what it takes to what? To destroy the Jewish people. So that's what we're dealing with. Then the Torah goes on and tells us, B'nai Korach lo mesu. The sons of Korach didn't die, Sarah. It's very strange because 3 weeks since B'nai Korach, Korach went down to the pit. So I wouldn't know. So why delay telling me that the sons of Korach didn't die? Why wait 3 weeks to tell me, Rachmiel? In Parshas Korach, if you read Parshas Korach, it looks like the whole family went down to the pit. Why keep me, Laurent, in suspense for 3 weeks, since Korach, I think it's 3 weeks, right? Only now, B'nai Korach lo mesu. And more important, what's the message? They did die, they didn't die. The Torah is not the history, it's GPS. There was someone else that did tshuva. On ben Pelet, the chief of Shevet Ruvain, he also did tshuva. You never hear from Shirley, do you? He disappears off the pages of Jewish history. He was called On, says the Talmud, from the word onen. What does an onen mean? A mourner. He couldn't stop feeling sorry for himself. How could I be so stupid to join the rebellion? My life is over, it's ruined. He couldn't get out of his depression. He became an onan. Is that the way for tshuva? No. B'nai Korach also did tshuva. But the Torah is not going to say On was saved physically from the pit. But mentally and spiritually he was what? Killed. He couldn't move on. He couldn't stop feeling sorry for himself. His life was over. The B'nai Korach, the Torah says, how will they behave? Will they follow On? Or will they get a life? So we have to wait. They didn't die physically, neither did On. But spiritually, mentally, On was dead to the world. How did B'nai Korach? B'nai Korach lo mesu. So Rashi quotes the Chazal. They did tshuva, and they wrote the most beautiful psalms in the book of Tehillim written by B'nai Korach. In fact, on Rosh Hashanah, before you blow shofar, which psalm do you read? Lam Natseach B'nai Korach Mizmor. Not once, Masha. How many times do you read it? 7 times. So they showed the way.
They rebuilt themselves.
Don't wallow in the sins of the past. Moving on, moving on, moving on up. On couldn't get out of his depression. Onan. That's the way for tshuva. Your life is over. He just couldn't stop feeling sorry for himself. But the B'nai Korach, they chose another way. They chose to move on, not to wallow in the sins of the past. Of course you have to do tshuva, but you have to get out of the closet and move on. Leave the skeletons alone in the closet. It's time to move on. The B'nai Korach became the great Nevi'im of the most beautiful Psalms. Despite their sin, Yosef, or because of their sin? You're missing the punchline. Because of their sin. Okay, you get it on the video. Okay, thanks to Rabbi Yaakov.
I can say something?
Yes.
We also reading Jonas.
What?
And when Jonas arrived inside the Leviathan, in front of
Yonah. Right.
He's arrived.
That's my son's name, Yonah. Right.
Arrived on the deep sea.
Right.
He see Korach pray.
He rose from the depths.
Really?
Right? Beautiful. Now, so you're supposed to get on, move on, do tshuva, and then progress. How do we know this? In Parshas Vayera, when the Malachim take Lot out of Sodom, the Malach says to him, Himolet al nafshecha, if you want to save your soul, al tabit achrecha. Don't keep looking back. Now, I don't need to know, Yosef, what the Malach said to Lot 3,800 years ago on some lonely road outside of Sodom. I couldn't care less what the Malach said. But he's not speaking only to Lot, Rabbi Yaakov. He's speaking to every one of us. Lot was a sinner. Himolet al nafshecha, the Malach says in Vayera. If you want to save your soul, al tabit achrecha. Don't keep looking back of the sins of the past. You pay for your mistakes and you move on. Otherwise, you'll wind up like On, who disappears from the pages of Jewish history. But now we have a problem, Yosef. You get beyond the sin, move on. B'nai Korach, On couldn't do it. B'nai Korach followed the advice of the Malach, and Lot also did tshuva, by the way. How do I know who comes from him? Ruth and the Mashiach come from Lot. He got out of Sodom. He didn't keep looking back in the skeleton in the closet to Connie. He was able to move on. So how come King David tells me in Psalm 51, after he does tshuva for the sin of Bathsheba, he says, V'chatati negdi tomid. My sin is always in front of me. Dr. Hackett, we just said that what? Get a life. Moving on. Onwards and upwards. King David did tshuva. Oh, did he do tshuva? And he paid a heavy price. So what does he say in Psalm 51? After his sin of Bathsheba, V'chatasi negdi tomid. My sin is in front of me. Because what? Because you do tshuva me'ahava, says the Gemara in Yom 86, the sin becomes a mitzvah. Now it's a mitzvah. David wrote the most beautiful psalms after he sinned with Bathsheba. Yiddish? You can check it in the book. He wrote the beautiful psalms despite the sin with Bathsheba or because. Now that sin has been transformed into a mitzvah. It's mind-boggling. Remember Rumpelstiltskin? You take manure and you turn it into gold. What? You take hay and turn it into gold. This is worse. You're taking manure, you turn it into gold. Tshuva mehava, Yuma 86. So now King David tshuva mehava, that avera is now a mitzvah. So therefore it's in front of me. That's pretty incredible. The greatest gift that Hashem gave us is what? The gift of tshuva. The gift of tshuva. Without that, you can't get out of bed in the morning. Right? But the great part is that after the sin, you can become much better. After a person feels that he's torn down, he can rebuild himself even better. Or he can remain like On, a permanent mourner. But that's not the way to go. So the Torah has to tell us. And then the Torah gives us a census. How many Jews there were? What is the census for? We don't, ancient history, who cares, Avi? Torah is GPS. Please remember GPS, God's personal system. It gives us all the tribes, and it gives us the B'nai Binyamin next to B'nai Dan. Now all the other tribes are giving in the list of their births. Benjamin was the youngest son. Dan was one of the older children. Why are they placed next door? And what's the message? All the other brothers, the Shvatim, they're giving it in chronological order. Benjamin was the youngest son, Dan was one of the older children, and they're placed next door. And it gives us the count of Benjamin. Now keep in mind, Benjamin came down to Egypt 210, how many is 210? 250 years ago. This is when, Rabbi Avraham, this 210 plus 40, right? The Jews were in Egypt 210. This is 40 years later. Benjamin, if you see in Parshat Vayigash, Benjamin came down to Mitzrayim 250 years ago from this. He came down with 10 sons. Dan came down with one son who was deaf and dumb. Imagine how Dan must have felt. My kid brother has 10 healthy children. And he's one of the older sons, Dan. He has one son born deaf and dumb. God, is that fair? You think he didn't think like that? Little did he know that 250 years later, Shirley, Benjamin, who came down to Egypt with 10 sons, in 250 years, 210 plus 40, how many grandchildren did he have? 45,000. Dan, who came down with one sick child, how many did he have? 64,000. Let's do the math.
He was very busy.
He was very busy. He was deaf and dumb, but he was very busy. Took a lot of spirulina and Viagra. Benjamin had 10 sons. So in 250 years, the 10 sons gave him 45,000 great-grandchildren. Dan had one sick child. Chushim was his name. And in 250 years, for one son, he had 64,000 grandchildren. What's the message, Elisheva? You can't second guess God. There is a plan. How do you think Dan must have felt? Little you know, 250 years later, his one sick child would give him many, many more grandchildren than his kid brother with 10 healthy sons. What's the message? There's a plan. Even though we're not privy to it, Dr. Hackett, but there is a plan. And we cannot second guess him. So that's the message. It's not history, census, Benjamin and Dan, but the Torah wants to point out that there is a plan. Nothing happens by chance. It's all part of God's plan, even though we cannot what? Figure it out. That's one of the messages. So here you have the Benoi Slavchad, the daughters of Slavchad. Rashi points out that the women loved Pisgat Zev, unlike the men. The men said, Meraglim, let's appoint a new captain and go back to Cairo. What did the women say? So long, we're going to Pisgat Zev, Rechavia. The Benoi Slavchad, they are the Ashkelon, they are the symbol. They loved Eretz Yisrael. The men said, let's go back to Borough Park, Cairo. And the women said, no. Tunoloni Achuzah. We want a portion of Eretz Yisrael. The women loved Eretz Yisrael much more. Much more. So Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know what to tell them. They have no brothers, the laws of Yerusha. Moshe said, stand back, I'll check with the boss. So you know what God said? Moshe, Cain benoi slavcha davrot. You know how you translate that in English? God said, right on, girls. Avi, I'm not making this up. You take a look at Bamidbar 27. Bamidbar 27, verse 7. God says, Cain benoi slavcha davrot. Right on, girls. Nasain titain. Give. They only wanted their father's portion in Pisgat Zev. In Ashkelon. But God said, Nasain titain. Don't just give them their father's portion, give them their grandfather's portion as well. Nasain titain. God said, I'm proud of these girls. Rashi makes an amazing comment. These girls, they were not prophets, they're plain Beis Yaakov girls. They saw more than Moshe Rabbeinu. Women have a bina yetera. How do you say that in English? Women's intuition. They saw more than Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe didn't know the halacha. They saw better. Women's intuition. So they only wanted pause part in Ashkelon. God said, Nosa in Titen, twice give them their father and also the grandfather who also left Egypt. That they also have to get. That's pretty incredible. Pretty amazing, huh?
And they had to marry within their tribe.
Yeah, they had to marry in their tribes because if they would marry somebody out of the tribe, and that portion would belong to what?
Their tribe.
The husband's tribe, right? But that decree was only in effect for the 14 years that it took to conquer and divide Eretz Yisrael. So Tu B'Av became a great yontif, but I don't want to rush it. That's a Tu B'Av shir. Why Tu B'Av became Sadie Hawkins Day? Sadie Hawkins? Tu B'Av? Let's stay tuned, okay? Don't rush me. See why that became Sadie. That's when the decree was canceled. For 14 years, Rabbi Abraham, when it took Joshua to conquer and divide Eretz Yisrael, for 14 years, if a boy from Shevet Naphtali fell in love with a girl from Shevet Asher, or a girl from Shevet Dan fell in love with a boy from what? Zevulun, they couldn't get married, Masha. It was Romeo and Juliet. Because the land was being divided, we're going to get all mixed up, the territory will pass out. After 14 years, when the land was divided up, Yeshua ben Nun sat down with his Bezdin, and the day happened to be what? Tu B'Av. The ban is lifted. So the boy from Naphtali can marry his sweetheart from Asher. And the girl from Dan can marry her sweetheart from Zevulun. The question is why Tu B'Av, but that's a cliffhanger. Okay? But that's when the decree was lifted. So this ban was temporary only during that time of Chalukah Eretz Yisrael. Then the Torah goes on and tells us the end of the Parsha is all about Karbanot. All about Karbanot. We haven't had Karbanot, Dr. Hackett, in 1949 years. How do I know that? The temple was destroyed in the year 68. Yosef, you good in math? We're now in the year 2017. How much is 2017 minus the year 68? 1949 years. Thank you. So why keep learning about what? The Karbanot? Why keep learning about the Karbanot? What's the message of what? Of the Karbanot that we have to learn about it? There'll be a third temple, but there isn't one yet. There isn't one yet. To get ready. But there has to be a message, what? Of now of the Karbanot. There has to be a message now of the Karbanot. So Torah starts off with the Karban Tamid. The daily offering, one in the morning and one in the afternoon, right? And then the Torah goes on with the Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh offering. Rosh Chodesh offering. And there's something very strange in Rosh Chodesh offering. It says, Chatat Lashem. It's a sin offering for God. So the Gemara in Chulin, page 60, Masha says, what do you mean a sin offering for God? How is the Rosh Chodesh Chatat, how is that a sin offering for God? Doesn't say that by any other Korban, except the Korban of Rosh Chodesh. It says one hairy goat, Bamidbar 28, verse 15, a sin offering for God. Elishav, I'm mixed up. A hairy goat, a sin offering for God. Golden, what's going on over here? Very strange Talmudic statement in Tractate Chulin, page 60. Says the Talmud there, Kodesh Baruch Hu says, Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh, bring a korban for me, God says, a kapara, that I diminish the moon. Remember, the Talmud says that the sun and the moon were both the same size, and then God diminished the moon. Right? So God says, bring a korban for me that I diminish the moon. So if God diminished the moon, why is he asking us for a korban? Why is God asking me, Dr. Hackett, for a kapara? He diminished the moon. It's between him and the moon. Blue moon. Says the great Rabbi Soloveitchik, based on the Zohar, the Jewish people are compared to the moon. We're surrounded by blackness. The UN, UNESCO, that's the bold, brass, arrogant sun. The Jewish people are the moon. Yehuda was surrounded with blackness, engulfed in blackness in Auschwitz and terrorism. And it looks like we're about to be swallowed up. Completely black. And then, next month, we're the great comeback kid. Says the Zohar, the Jewish people are the moon. We keep rejuvenating ourselves. That's why we're so hated. You're back. We destroyed 6 million of you. You're back to build the jewel of the Middle East, the envy of the high world, low-tech, high-tech, smartphone, dumb for medicine. We take air and turn it into water. We sell water to Jordan and Africa. From the air, we take water. You're back? 6 million, you were destroyed. What are you doing back? We're the great comeback kid. We suffer. We're surrounded blackness and darkness, but we all shine on. Says the great Rabbi Soloveitchik, the moon is a symbol of the Jewish people. God is asking us for kapara that I have to put it through to Auschwitz and terrorism and pogroms. There's a plan, God says. I can't share it with you, but I'm asking you kapara. So every Rosh Chodesh is Yom Kippur for Kodesh Baruch Hu, for Auschwitz, for terrorism. Rav Soloveitchik, based in his Gemara in Chulin, page 60. God is asking us for a kapara that the Jewish people are so persecuted. Throughout all the ages, there is a plan. We're not privy to it, but there is a plan. But for putting us through the torture throughout the centuries, God says, Rosh Chodesh is my Yom Kippur. Bring a kapara for me that I have to do this to you. There's a plan. The Jewish people will shine forever despite the darkness. Don't despair. Hang in there. There's something very strange. Rosh Chodesh is a holiday, Yosef, for ladies. You know that? Oh, you don't know that? Good thing you came today. Pirkei the Rebbe Lezer says that Rosh Chodesh is a yontif for ladies. Not for us. For ladies. Right? Ladies that don't do laundry, you're supposed to take your wife out for lunch or dinner, Dr. Abramson, on Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh, the lady has a Yom Tov. Madua, you don't know that? Pirkei the Rebbe Lezer. Rosh Chodesh is a holiday just for the women. Why? Please fasten your seatbelts, Elisheva, for this one. What? They didn't sin with the Egel. So give them every second Wednesday off. Okay, they didn't worship the golden calf disco. Golden. You're right, you didn't do it. We did. So get every second Wednesday off. Why Rosh Chodesh is a holiday for the ladies? Please hear me well. Rosh Chodesh, can you see the moon? No. It's totally black. In Mitzrayim, the chief rabbi of Israel, Amram, divorced his wife. They only saw blackness. Why have babies? They'll wind up in the bottom of the Nile River. So the chief rabbi and all the Hasidim divorced their wives. They only saw black. Miriam and the women said, what are you doing? It's black now, but the moon will shine again. Rosh Chodesh, Rachmiel, it's all black. The men all be sore in Mitzrayim, hopeless. Why have children? They'll wind up in Auschwitz. But little Miriam and the rest of the women said, what are you doing? It looks black now, but it's not going to be black for long. The eternal moon will shine again. It's your holiday, ladies. We couldn't see it. We all saw blackness. The women knew it looked black now, but will shine again. We all shine on. Amram, the father of Moses, couldn't see it. But the women saw it. That's why, Shirley, it's your holiday, not mine. Rosh Chodesh, it's all black. Ain't going to stay black for long. You hear this? Even Amram, the father of holy Moses, couldn't see it. The chief rabbi of Israel. Little Miriam knew better. It's amazing. Little Miriam, she said, Abba, your decree is worse than Pharaoh. Because Pharaoh only decreed on what? Boys. By divorcing mommy, you're preventing baby girls from being born. He's the chief rabbi of Israel, Amram. He could have said, little girl, you're talking to me. Go back to romper room. Remember romper room? What are you telling me? Go back to your milk and cookies. But no, Dr. Abrams, he listened to his little girl, and he remarried Yocheved, and who was born? If it wasn't for little Miriam, Moses would never be born. Little Miriam, 6 years old. No redeemer, no lawgiver. What's the message of the Talmud? The Talmud doesn't tell me stories, Yosef. Sota, page 12. What's the message? Listen to your little girls. You could be a great rabbi. Listen to your little girl. Women, even a little girl has a bina yetera that the chief rabbi doesn't have. Elisheva, it's not ancient history. Don't tell her go back. Remember romper room? Don't tell her that. Listen to your little girl. What a message. What? That's a powerful message, right? That's a powerful message.
She never worked, never did have
the mikveh lady.
She never wrote SCOTUS?
She never worked. That's right. That's right. Women had to make another appointment. Nachon. Yeah. Leila nishmata. So the Torah gives a list of all the chagim. All of the chagim and all of the karbonot. And on Sukkot, there was something that was not done on any other chag. There was nisochai amai. All the karbonos were accompanied, you'll say, by wine libations. On Sukkot, the only holiday where besides wine libations, they also poured water on the altar. Never did that in any other chag. And the Talmud in Sukkah, chapter 5, makes a strange statement, Yehuda. Whoever didn't see the Simchat Beit HaShoeva, whoever didn't see, they drew water from the Shaloach stream, and they poured it, what? On the altar. Whoever didn't see that, never saw joy in their life. Remember the Ed Sullivan show? The greatest rabbis could have been on the Ed Sullivan show. The Talmud in Sukkah, chapter 5, says the greatest rabbis juggled 7 fiery torches, and they were acrobats. Remember Ed Sullivan? Topo Gijo? Yeah. The greatest rabbis had nothing better to do, Golda. Sukkah, page 5. The simplest Beis HaShev, you take a little water and you pour it where? On the altar. And they went wild, juggling, acrobats, tight ropes. Myron, what are you so excited about? What's the big deal? Please hear me well. Nisoch hamayim b'chag is not found anywhere in the written Torah. You know, we have 2 Torahs. And most of the laws of the oral Torah, you'll say, have some source in the written Torah. A hint here, a letter there. Nisoch hamayim, pouring water on the altar on Sukkot, has absolutely no source in the written Torah. It's completely tradition. Halacha l'Moshe b'Sinai. It's nowhere written. The Tzedokim were upset with the rabbis of the Second Temple period. What are you guys pouring water on the altar sukkahs? What are you, off the wall? It doesn't say nowhere in the written Torah. There's not even a hint to it. Not even a hint to it. So why would the rabbis, I'm so excited by pouring water on the altar on Sukkot? And the greatest joy in juggling acts and animal acts, all there. What's so excited? Because this mitzvah has no basis where? Written Torah. It's completely what? Oral Torah. So what? That's the reason for the great joy? Yes. The Talmud Yerushalmi tells us that of the two Torahs, which is more beloved and precious to God? The oral Torah. The oral Torah. So this mitzvah is not found nowhere in the written Torah. It's completely oral Torah. So therefore, the rabbis had such great joy. This is completely oral Torah. As Sarah said, we are partners with God in the oral Torah. The written Torah is fixed in stone. The oral Torah, we're his partners. Can DNA define a mamzer? IVF, who is the halakhic mother? The birth mother or the egg donor? Let's say the egg donor is what? A non-Jewish woman. And the birth mother is a Jewish woman. Does the baby need gerut? You won't find that anywhere in the written Torah. That's the oral Torah. So for the privilege to be God's partner in the oral Torah, for that privilege the rabbis went wild with joy. With the juggling and acrobats and dancing all night long. The oral Torah, we're his partners. For that privilege, for that joy, they experienced this. Simchat Beit HaSheva has no source at all in the written Torah. It's completely oral Torah. But there's another reason why the oral Torah is more beloved by God than the written Torah. Sarah gave a great answer. Because in the oral Torah, we are his partners. God says, I can't do it without you. The living Torah. Therefore, the golden ark in the Mishkan, Yosef, the outside was made out of gold. And the inside was made out of what? Wood. So the Baal HaTurim says, the outside, that represents the written Torah. That's fixed in gold. The inside of the ark was Eitz HaChaim, the living Torah. That's the oral Torah, constantly developing, adapting to DNA. The husband says, my wife, I was away in China for a business trip. This kid is not mine. It's the milkman's kid. There are no witnesses, you'll say. DNA. DNA stands for divine natural ability. Can DNA determine if the child's a mamzer or not? You won't find that in the written Torah. That's the oral Torah. We and God develop it. But there's another reason why the oral Torah is more precious to him. The written Torah is written, Yosef, on animal skin, right? The oral Torah, I've got you under my skin. Avi, written Torah is on animal skin. Where's the oral Torah written? On my skin. On my neshama. I'm more precious to God than animal skin. Therefore, the oral Torah is what? More beloved.
Why don't we read the oral Torah, which is written down?
Well, we do, the Talmud. Rabbi wrote it down because the people got verstopped the cups, you know.
Every Shabbat, like we.
Well, Daf Yomi. You'll say, in 7.5 years, you finished the whole Talmud. The whole oral Torah. How many pages are there? 2,713 pages.
Wow.
In 7.5 years, you finish the whole oral Torah. You do a page a day. So you do read it. You do read it. Nachon? Now, we're just beginning now the 3 weeks. The saddest period in Jewish history. Churban. The blackest week in Jewish history are these 3 weeks. There's another 3 weeks, Sarah, which are the whitest in Jewish history. From Rosh Hashanah to Hoshana Rabbah. are the most Shana Rabbah. Rosh Hashanah, Shana Rabbah. Rosh Hashanah is on the first day of Tishrei. Shana Rabbah is when? 21st day of Tishrei. So parallel to these 3 black weeks are 3 white weeks, where we get Kapara Slicha. There's an amazing Maharsha. On Yom Kippur, we brought 2 identical goats. One went to Hashem, and one went off a cliff. So long, sucker. One carried all the sins of the Jewish people over the cliff. And the other one went to what? The Mizbeach, Kodesh Kedoshim. Which is holier, Avi? You would ask me, I'd say that the one that went to Hashem is much holier, much more important than what? Than the one laden with all of our sin and gets pushed off a cliff. But the Talmud tells us they're both equally important. Both goats had to be the same size, the same weight, the same color. Just like the Soyer Hashem was a kapara, the Soyer Azazel was a kapara. And the Rasha says that these 3 weeks on blackest of Jewish history, that represents the Soyer Azazel. And the 3 weeks from Rosh Hashanah to Tishrei, before you know it, represents the Soyer Hashem. Just like the 3 weeks from beginning of Tishrei to Shana Rabbah are the happiest, joyful weeks that give us kapara and slicha. So these 3 black weeks that we're in now give us the same kapara and slicha. Soyer Hashem, Soyer Azazel. They look like totally opposite, but you can't have one without the other. So all suffering in life and all tragedy, it's all a kapara. It's not vindictive. You know, the Zohar says that this world is one humongous hospital. And we all come down to get cured. But the paradox is that the suffering of the body is the cure for the soul. It's like a paradox. The suffering of the body, the cure of the soul. The happiest day in the Jewish calendar was Yom Kippur. The Mishnah in Taina says. The blackest day in Jewish history was what? Tisha B'Av. They're celebrated exactly the same. Surely, isn't that strange? I think it's bizarre. The happiest day in Jewish history, happy days are here again, was Yom Kippur. Mishnah and Tainus. And the saddest day in Jewish history, Tisha B'Av. They are celebrated exactly the same. The same things that you can't do what? On Yom Kippur, you can't do what? On Tisha B'Av. Is that a coinky dinky? You can't wear leather shoes on Yom Kippur, you can't wear leather shoes on Tisha B'Av. No marital relations on Yom Kippur, no marital relations on Tisha B'Av, etc. Exactly. Isn't it bizarre that we celebrate the happiest day in Jewish history, Yom Kippur, as the saddest day in the Jewish calendar? Soyer Hashem, Soyer Azazel. It's all part of the picture. You can't have one without the other. And this explains why God is usually very benevolent in giving us emotions. How does a person express great sorrow, Dr. Hackman? Great sorrow? Tears. How does a person express great joy?
Tears.
Isn't that strange? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is usually so benevolent with emotions. Why do we have to express great sorrow and great joy the exact same way? Now, if you take a tear of joy and a tear of sorrow and you put it under a microscope, can you tell the difference?
No.
What's the message? Whether there's great joy in life, a chas v'sholem, great sorrow, it's all one and the same. It's all one and the same. I can't see it. And therefore, Jewish religion, you want to sum up in one statement. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. That's Judaism in one statement. You know that? Why? Who are you talking to? The guy in the mirror. Shema Yisrael. Hashem. What's Hashem? Yud Kei Vav Kei. Midas Harachamim. That's Yom Kippur. What's Elokeinu? Tisha B'Av. Hashem Echad. It's all what? All same. Can I see it? No, so I go like this. Yo, why do I go like this if I say Shema Yisrael? I can't see it. I believe it, that whether it's Yom Kippur or Tisha B'Av, Hashem Echad. But I can't see it, so I have to go like this. But Zechariah 14 says, Bayoimahu, Yashem Echad, Shmo Echad. On that day, God's name will be one, and He will be one. Now He's not one. He's one now, but I can't see it. I see Tisha B'Av and Abu Mamzer and terrorism. I can't see His oneness. I believe it, but I can't see it, so I go like this. But Zechariah 14 says, Bayoimahu, on that day, when we shed the bodysuit and beam me up after 120, we won't have to cover our eyes. We'll see how Yom Kippur, the white fast, and Tisha B'Av, the black fast, Avi, it's what? It's all the same. But I can't see it now because I'm trapped in my bodysuit. It's like trying to describe sunrise, sunset. A person born blind, can you describe to him sunrise and sunset? It's impossible. So Zechariah 14 says, of course God is one now, but I can't see His oneness now. I believe it, I can't see it. How could Auschwitz and Tisha B'Av be the same as Yom Kippur? I believe it. Whatever God does is for the good. We make a mistake. We say, Kol man dov yachmon el tavavit. We say, what do we say? Gam zu l'tova. Beautiful. Whatever God does is good. Is that so? Gam zu l'tova. Now we see a lot it's not good. How could terrorism be good? Litova. What does litova mean? After 120, when we shed the bodysuit, we'll see how. Now it's not good. You make dayan emes le'aleinu. But gamzu litova. After 120 years, you'll see how all the tragedy somehow was also for the good. Now I can see it now. So let's hope that that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends us more the Yom Kippurs now and eliminates the Tisha B'Avs. Hopefully, look, if Mashiach comes before Tisha B'Av, then next Tuesday, party time.
Not next Tuesday.
2 Tuesdays, thank you. Instead of fasting, will be what? Feasting. The question is why? That's a cliffhanger. Why won't the cast, not enough that the fast will be canceled? Zechariah 8 says, Tzom Arvi, Tzom HaChamishi, the fast of the 4th, that's Shilos of Tammuz, and the fast of Tisha B'Av won't be canceled. Yeh l'sasan u'l'simcha. How come it ain't enough to cancel it, Connie? No. It'll be what? Celebrate, celebrate. That's a cliffhanger. Why? Why Tisha B'Av won't be canceled? It'll be transformed into a day of great joy. The question is why? Okay, but that's a cliffhanger. On Sunday we have a class at 2 o'clock. Revenge is sweet. So why does the Torah forbid it? What's so bad about taking revenge? Isn't it sweet? Yes. Why does the Torah forbid it? Cliffhanger Sunday at 2. Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.